Hey, hello. Doing the mulligan guide on Aggro, or Aggro, however you want to call it. I call it Zoo Ambersteel sometimes as well. I think the deck has many different ways you sort of can approach the mulligan. I think the deck lives and dies a bit by the mulligan because, in a sense, you're only going to see on average the top 15 to 20 cards of the deck, as I mentioned, because it's just such an aggressive deck. And if you're lucky, you get one dock. If you're lucky, you get another dock. And if you're very lucky, you're going to see all four of them, which I've never done before. I think three is the most I've seen. So you're aiming to see the top 15 cards. And the only thing, the other way we can really impact that is looking at the top seven and choosing what our opening seven cards are going to be, or having a very good way at choosing them with the very generous mulligan in Lorcana. So I think, yeah, the deck really lives and dies by it. And I think a lot of players might go for very aggressive mulligans where they will just look to get the absolute nuts, as they call it in TCGs, where they just basically want to get the best optimal hand they can. They will send away anything that's not even remotely optimal. Others want to play it a bit more reserved, and just say, it looks like a very healthy curve. I can win this. And I try and do a mix of both, really. I think with this deck, into a majority of the matchups, besides matchups into, say, the mirror and things like that, mirror or green steel, and maybe traditional amber steel song, you can sort of just do a very maybe basically into anything that's not a steel deck, actually, when I'm thinking about it, because I'm gonna put purple steel on that list. You can do a very standard mulligan as long as you've got that like 1 2 3, you're putting pressure on the board, you're playing something that's going to get you a lot of lore, and you're going wider, and then you can play your dock. Like, I feel like you probably will win that game. Into the steel matchups, it feels like Cindy is very good, but there's also an overlap, I think, where just saying that doesn't mean that Cindy is bad into, say, Blurple. If you're able to play Cindy early and get three wide and play Sing Your Strength for the Raging Fire, I think that's also very good. But I think you can easily win that Blurple matchup by playing a Daisy turn one, going a bit wider, playing a Lady, playing a Dock, spamming and topping off with like a Vinny or something like that. So I think into these, like especially the Mirror, Green Steel, traditional Steel Song, it's felt a little bit like Purple Steel, but maybe not Purple Steel. I feel like Cindy turn one is really going to be the make or break of you winning that matchup, so I tend to go a lot heavier for it in there. But on the blind, I tend to just go, this hand looks very playable. It's the first sort of deck where I haven't really had to go for the absolute, absolutely perfect. I'm like, oh, this hand, yeah, I've got a 1 2 3. I've got something that can sing. I've got a dock in hand. I'll just keep. It's weird that I'm at a deck that I can keep. And if you're watching this content from being a Sapphire player, where majority of the time you're like, well, all these cards are all right, but I have no 2-cost ramp, or I have no ramp in my hand. I have to send it all back, or I have to send back 6 cards or whatever, 5 or 6 cards, as you do with Sapphire decks, because you're like, I need the ramp. Whereas here, it's like, no, the hand looks optimal, it looks fine, I can probably keep it. So, yeah, it's been a very interesting learning curve for me. As I say, I think there'll be other players who'll play it completely differently. But from what I've learned, I've been listening and talking to all the other players who play Sapphire, Amber Steel, sorry, at a very high level. And a lot of the time, you can keep just a very optimal hand rather than going for the absolute insane games. And then sometimes you're very lucky and stumble upon your Rhino Shift Sing Strength or your Cindy double 2-drop into Lady Dock, singing Strength along the way. Like, it has loads of different lines. So optimally, like I say, you're aiming to just get things that you can put on the board early. You want your 1-drops, like and as there is 16 1-drops in the deck, I feel like I can be a bit more relaxed. Like, if I've got a 2 and a 3 that I like, I sometimes will just send back some and keep the 2 and a 3. I won't go absolutely crazy to try and find that 1-drop, because the likelihood is I'm going to draw into the 1-drop. There's 16 cards in the deck that can be played on turn one. Of course, more optimally is like Cinderella or maybe Rhino if you have the shift line. But any of these can be played. And then from there, I am kind of looking at different patterns of maybe double spelling or trying to get the board wider as I can. So if I had a Cinderella turn one and I could play double Daisy on turn two and sing Strength, that would be great. But I also want to look at, so what happens after that? Do I have an ability to play Dock? So maybe like an optimal hand would be like 2 Daisies, a Strength for the Raging Fire, a Cinderella, a Lady, a Dock, and then something that you could ink. And that would be like, yeah, this hand's fine. This hand looks pretty good. Like, I could play this out and see where it goes, especially into blind. And then, like, yeah, Daisy's pretty good into anything as long as you can protect them. It doesn't really matter about the card draw on them. But finding the Dock, I find, is quite important. It's rare that I will lean very heavily on Rapunzel being the thing that can draw me cards. In this deck, I've just gone back to Rapunzel very briefly, just because I didn't feel Sven was doing exactly what I wanted him to do in the deck. So I went back to Rapunzel, but I have mainly been leaning into Doc as the thing that's going to get your card draw. So yeah, and the only time I would say the deck that ever gets further away from that, like, oh, this hand looks optimal, I'll play it, is into Amber Steel, into Green Steel, into Purple Steel, where it's like, I need to get a singer and I need to be singing removal, because if they have it, I will probably lose. And if I'm on the draw, I definitely need to go for that. So in those games, I will go a lot heavier for I need to get Cinderella or Rhino Shift Line, even doing things where I'll keep the big Rhino if I don't have the one drop, because I know I'll probably lose this matchup if I don't get that shift off or I don't get singing early. Because just playing an optimal curve out to the board is not good enough on the draw. On the play, sometimes you can get away with it. I've been testing, if you just triple Daisy, play a Vinny, you're probably going to get to 20 before they answer your entire board. You could even just do Mulan into Smee, into Pete or Lawrence or Lady, and then sing Strength from there. So I feel if you can't achieve getting a very optimal hand on the play, it's fine. You're probably still going to win that game, as long as you just don't skip and just get tons of uninkables in your hand. And that's the thing as well. The deck is not that dense on uninkables. I think it's at 15, but if you're going to go heavy and find 2 docks in your opener, that can be the reason that you lose the game. That's also, again, why we play Mulan, so we can draw and discard and clean the hand up. But if your opening hand, you've gone really heavy on the mulligan, is 4 docks or not 4, but like 2 docks and 2 Let the Storms, you're probably going to lose that game as well. So we want to be a little bit more safe on it. If we keep 1 dock as well in the mulligan, which we really optimally should, we shouldn't be sending away too many cards, because again, if we get 2 docks in the opener, we're in a kind of a rough spot. So it's a very interesting mulligan. I think the Amber Steel mulligans are, in my opinion, are probably the most complex ones in the game. Sometimes it just feels like they're not, because they can just get their Cindy singing Storm and Strength really early on. But from all the decks that I've played, it's felt the most complex one, because in my opinion, the Sapphire decks is you look for ramp, then you look for a thing to play after your ramp, maybe find a Porp, that's about it. Ubi Amethyst tends to be just a curve and some card draw. Green decks are kind of heavy on their Diablo finding and their Ursula and their like discard package, and for everything else, yeah, it ends to be just a normal curve. Of Amber Steel, it's kind of like, I want singers. I want to be able to keep drawing cards with Doc or Rapunzel or Whole New World, depending on which build they're playing. And do I keep a shift line because the shift is going to be very impactful in this matchup, or do I not? It's just very interesting to me, and I think there's quite a lot going on there. But I can jump into sort of a hand that I would go for. So if you were doing this sort of blind on the play, like I say, if it was blind, you would kind of know that, all right, I have like some options here. I can go 1, 2, 3 into a penny and just go wider. And as well, I'd admit that keeping 1-drops in the hand are very good, because you can ink them, and that means later on in the game when you're playing your docks and everything, or you're just drawing off the top, because you're going to be drawing off the top, it's unlikely that you would draw another 1-drop, because you've been inking them early. So even saying this is how optimally I think you can play the deck. If you're on the play, this hand looks like you could do things, and you're probably going to be fine. You might want to get that Rhino down turn 1. So if you ever top deck the shift, you can use it. Or you can ink the Rhino, play the Mulan, and start drawing towards your dock, and you get your character set up. You could ink another Rhino, play Smee next turn, ink whatever, play Lady, go to Penny, keep questing. You're now going to heal up your Smee and protect it. And then you could sing Strength. So even this would be a fairly optimal hand, I think, on the play. On the draw, I might send back some of these cards just to try and find the Rhino shift line. But I think, yeah, even on the draw, I feel like if it was blind, I'd be like, I'll just take my chances and see how this hand plays out. I don't think it's the worst hand. So I try to go for a new one. Yeah, I was hoping to get one that was a bit more like, oh, I don't really know what's going on in this hand. And here, like, you've got good enough stuff. You've got Rhino and you've got a shift line. So on the play, like, definitely you're going to get rid of this Vinny, because Vinny is more of a card you want to draw into when you're playing out your curve. So you've played everything, you've quested full sideways, and you've got a Vinny, and you put the Vinny on the board. But playing Vinny on 3 has never felt that great. I think especially when you could be doing something like Pete locking them out of the game, or you could be playing Lady to go wider. Playing Vinny on 3 never feels amazing. Not to say that if you have a Vinny and like that's your only turn 3, I think it's still fine. But even still, if your hand is a 2-drop and a 1-drop, I might opt to play those over the Vinny. But here, yeah, I think we could go a little bit more aggressive on the mulligan. We can go one shift into Let the Storm. Keep this around for a card to play and just an inkable. We could even say that we send this back because now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. But I'm opting to keep the penny because if the deck has an answer to my Rhino, I'm literally playing nothing on 2. So I think I'd go for something like that. And yeah, at this point, it's not the worst. I'd probably like feel out what the matchup is, see which one I want to use. Like if they open Daisy turn 1, that's great. We just play Rhino, shift it, and probably win the game on the spot there. This is the point as well I can mention that, like I say, Vinny is not great to play on the curve, but he would be set up as a singer for any of these songs if you hadn't used them by that point as well. You could even maybe draw it into another 1-drop and play the 1-drop on 1 and play 2 1-drops on 2, and then line up for a shift line and then use this penny as a bit more, use her ability a bit more because she's a 2-quester and you can play her on the board, but I think you want to be using that resist and healing ability. Or you could just go, like I say, like the Occam's Razor thing, the most simplest thing is the answer. Just ink and play your curve out, go 1, 2, 3. If they manage to remove it, I might even end up playing the Cindy on the second turn instead of the penny. But yeah, I think even this, you could find your way into getting a win. If this Rhino sticks, you pretty much win the game. On the play, like there's no way for them to interact with that, so that's going to happen. I'd probably put the Cindy away and play the Rhino shift and then see where we're up to and maybe just get this Vinny out. And then we could start singing our removal as well. And we've got 2 singers set up. It's always awkward. Rhino is great. He can sing. He can trade, but most of the time, because I'm an aggressive deck, I want to be doing the thing that gets me the most lore. Sometimes removing things in the long run will give you the most lore, so that's never the worst thing to do. But to be honest with you, I'm always just like, I want to turn this guy sideways and just quest out. But yeah, on the play, I think this would be just impeccable because you've got the shift and 2 singing songs, and the Vinny is probably the only thing here that's kind of putting the hand back a bit. But I think that's absolutely fine. And then on the draw, yeah, I think if you drew another 1-drop, you could go triple 1-drop into I'm going to get something off. It's great. So say if we drew a Mulan in this hand, you could play Mulan the turn 1. Turn 2, you play the Rhino and the Cindy. Your opponent would only be able to respond to one of those things unless they had double fire the cannons or whatever. So they can only respond to one thing. So you're either going to get your shift line off or you're going to get Cinderella singing songs. So you can tempo swing your way back into the game. And you might even say if they open Cindy turn 1, you might want to just ink penny pass, turn 2, play Rhino and Cindy. So again, you're going to get one of those things that happen. Cindy's either going to sing songs or Rhino's going to be removed. The right play would be remove the Rhino because in the mirror, whoever's got the Rhino on board and it's doing things is probably going to lose the game. It's probably going to win the game. But sometimes they might go for the Cindy because they're like, I don't think you have the Rhino shift or whatever. So it's very interesting. But we'll do another new game. And again here, like I think this is, again, like you could go, you don't need to analyze this hand too hard. You got a 1, 2, you could ink, you could keep the Pete or play the Pete, depending. So if it's a steel matchup, you could keep the Pete and use it to lock them out. And then hopefully maybe draw a song or something like that to sing from it. But you've also got the Cindy turn 1 to do that as well. And then the next turn you could ink and then you could play Doc and the Piglet. So you could ink that turn 1, play that out, then ink something else that you maybe drew, play the Piglet, ink, play Pete, or you could go Cinderella Piglet, and then you could just keep spamming out until you Doc spam as well and keep going wider. So I think a lot of people, I think the interesting part of this hand though is that if you're on the draw, you probably maybe wouldn't ink the Rhino. You would keep these 2 Cindy's. I think if you're on the draw, you maybe look at getting rid of these and seeing if you can draw something better. We should draw a song, which isn't too bad. So you'd probably ink one of these Pete's, depending, yeah, if it was a steel matchup or a mirror, because we kind of want to get this Rhino out. Sing the Let the Storm. Hopefully you get something to play on 2 or 1. And I will admit, like I say, I play quite reserved. When I'm mentioning these hands, I'm saying on the play, like if it looks good enough, I'll just run this hand. On the draw, I feel like Aggro and just Lorcana in general, you have to be playing very, very well. So I kind of go for a little bit more of a heavier mulligan when I do, but I still think like the power of Amber Steel Aggro and just the deck in general, like you can win on the draw with fairly less optimal hands. But I think the main thing that to take away is that you want a singer or you want something singing early on. So yeah, this is like an interesting one. Like you've got, if you're on the play, you've got enough going on there. So you could do 1, 2, and then the worst thing is, I don't think you want Lady always to play the Doc out unless you're completely hand dumping. But playing Lady into dock is fine. We'll probably get another 2-drop if we send all this back. Yeah, we got some fairly decent hand there. So on the play, ink a Rhino, play a Rhino, hopefully get something else to ink, play the Smee out. Lady, Penny puts the buff on Smee, he can keep questing and either sing that strength or play the dock or whatever ends up being the way the hand like runs out. But on the draw as well, like you probably just play the Rhino out. And Rhino can do an interesting thing where the shift line enough can scare people that they probably wouldn't like want to play something onto it, or they're going to change their ways they play. It's the same way that when someone plays a Cindy turn 1, it might impact their like play pattern because they're a bit worried of Cindy singing let the Storm Rage on their Chernobog or whatever, or their Robin Hood 1-drop, so they might change the way they play. So I'd still get it down turn 1, you're still progressing your board, and you'd be at a point where you could Ladies go wider, and then you could maybe get a 2-drop on the dock or a 1-drop on the dock to do there. I mean, here, this is like, I think this is just the mega perfect hand. Maybe not perfect, but yeah, I think even on the draw, on the play, you don't change anything about this. Blind into any matchup, really. The only matchup maybe I'll do one afterwards besides Ruby Sapphire, where you're just looking for aggressive questers in the dock. But here, yeah, you'd win all the low to the ground matchups with this. I think you could play that Rhino turn. You could probably play Cindy turn 1 on the play, definitely sing that, play the Rhino and a Cindy or double Rhino. I think it really doesn't matter too much. Threatening, having 1 shift line or threatening 2 shift lines is great. And just storming them that way and just winning the game. On the draw, yeah, even if they open Cindy turn 1, you could probably still play your Cindy out because you're fairly confident that next turn you can either double Rhino and get the shift off, or Rhino and play a Cindy and get it off. And then once your hand's depleted, you can play the dock. So I think this matchup would win all the low and steel matchups. I think it would probably win against Blurple and Ruby Amethyst as well. But it's worth mentioning, like, say if you're doing a hand versus Ruby Sapphire, I think you just basically go for quite an aggressive opener. Cindy that's one place where Cindy does not stand and look that strong. I did just reset that because that last hand was awful and I don't know if anyone had anything they could learn from it. But if you were playing against Ruby Sapphire, I think what you get rid of is here. You still have 1, 2, and then hopefully draw something for your Ladies to play. As well, Mulan can hopefully draw, and if you get a bit of a rougher hand, you can draw into something better. We didn't get that rougher hand, but I think I would probably ink a Rhino, play the Daisy out, play the probably play the Mulan and the Cindy, see what else I have to ink. Ink, play a Lady, and then play a Smee, and hopefully the Mulan will draw us into a dock, because I wouldn't say the deck lives and dies by that, but I think on the draw you would definitely need the dock. And especially against Ruby Sapphire, they can eventually get on top of you and lock you out of the game. Amber still has no reach in its deck. So finding the dock is pretty good. Mulan giving you the ability to find, go 1 card deeper and find the dock is great as well. That's why I kind of get her out. She's fairly awkward. She'll like 1-1 a Tipo. A lot are on Super Goof, which will get removed by it, but that's fine. You know, they're just going to play Super Goof and not ramp to their big Sisu and take one thing out a turn after it's gained its lore. So that's not the worst thing in the world, but I can maybe do another one on Ruby Sapphire. Again, like, you would just look for something that's fairly more optimal. I think actually that was me being a bit aggressive. You could do, so if you're playing as Ruby Sapphire, you can like just look for optimal lore. I get so excited talking about this deck because I really like it. You look for some really optimal lore there. Daisy turn 1 into Piglet, into Penny Mulan. Let's send that back and see what we get. It got even better. You know, you could ink one of the Ladies. I find 2 Ladies is quite rough. Lady is an interesting card. I really like it, but as a top deck, it's horrible. You know, because it's not the worst in the world. It's still quest for 2, but it's not doing what it wants to the full extent. So that can be pretty rough. And as well, like, it's just gonna, you know, if you're not putting that much of an optimal 1-drop on the board, also 2-drops are on the board, it's not amazing, and it can like completely deplete your hand if you're going to Lady twice and not have a dock in hand. That can really hit you. So I think actually from the outset I'd probably ink Lady, play Daisy, play the Piglet out, maybe ink Penny or Mulan depending on how the hand's shaping out, play Lady, go Smee, and at that point you're presenting so much lore and they're still doing sail into whatever. Their Grand Matala and Maui's will maybe eat you up if they get to find them, but it won't be the worst in the world. So yeah, I think that's a general way to look at it. I think the only fringe matchup that I can think of is Yellow Green Under the Sea, where in that deck I think just the main thing that's going to be key for you is, of course, you do Penny into Smee into keep that dock. I think maybe I'd even keep this entire hand if you're on the play versus yellow green under the sea. You could play Cindy turn one, play whatever you need to, sing your strength on a Diablo if they played it. Keep going wider, keep going aggressive, dock, and then draw some cards. But the thing that I'm going to mention against that matchup is keeping cards like Mr. Smee, Lawrence, and Pete, because they have more strength than is required for Under the Sea to work, which means they have to find the Keeda. And Pete can just lock them out of doing any of their discard, which is the majority of where their draw power comes from. And also, he's another thing that can sing, and he's also got more strength than Under the Sea requires to be put to the bottom of the deck. So, yeah, I think for that matchup completely as well, just prioritizing some really early lore. If you went Daisy into Piglet, if you went Daisy, Piglet, what's his called? You could maybe on the play you could do Daisy, Piglet, Lady into another 2-drop like a Smee, and then play Pete and you full quest. And their deck is not very good at challenging, and they can't use any of their bounce actions or anything like that. They can't utilize their muses. You probably just win that game on the spot. But that's the only other fringe matchup I can really think of. Besides that, you just play a very aggressive, what's it called? Just aggro game style. And that's the thing with the deck as well. So you'll see other decks like Ruby Sapphire Workshop or Ruby Sapphire, the DKP list. When they can't do their game plan. You know, maybe they miss their ramp. Maybe they don't find their shark. Maybe they don't find the pieces they need. They don't have much to fall back on to try and win the game. Whereas with aggro, if you ever just really can't seem to get your game plan working, it's just play your character and turn it sideways. And sometimes as well, that's when we games against Emerald Amethyst. That's when we games against Blurple, because they just couldn't answer everything that I was playing every turn and just turning it sideways. You know, I've won games by just later on drawing Lawrence, playing it. They couldn't find the answer for it, and it quests and win the game. So yeah, and there's so many little characters as well that means that they will have to really burst through a lot of removal to deal these things, and they might just run out of them eventually. You know, full questing everything, playing a Piglet versus Blurple can, you know, if you've got 4 or 5 characters questing, you know, they'll have an Elsa to exert your Piglet, run it out. You know, they'll have ways to move damage around with Bell, they have foxes, but they couldn't do all of that, and everything you've got on board is so cheap and so small. So and then you play a Vinny on top as well and just win it that way. So yeah, I think the general sort of rule is, in a blind matchup, you don't know what you're playing against, like just look for a fairly optimal hand. You know, you're doing something every turn. If it's into a steel deck, you know, getting those singers down early just wins you these games. And prioritize getting a dock, but don't get too many docks in hand. So if you've kept the dock in hand, don't go too aggressive on the mulligan, because drawing another one can be very crucial to, can be very, very high chance of losing the game. I'm trying to figure out how to word that. But yeah, there's just sort of the pointers on it, really. I think as well, it's always I don't think it's a great way for someone to describe how to do a mulligan, but I think sometimes it is looking at the hand and sort of feeling out like, right, so this doesn't seem like a line I've ever done before, but if I go triple Mulan into like what's his name, Vinny, and full quest, like, oh wait a minute, all their things die when they, or get banished when they run into my things, and Vinny is getting me lore, that could work, and the Mulans can help me form a good hand. Or, you know, you may have not done it may be a matchup where you don't think triple Daisy works, but that's the most optimal thing that's looking in your hand, and shipping them all back could give you a less optimal hand. You have to be winning straight out of the gate with the deck. Like, there's no comeback, I don't think. You can do some really crazy singing, and you don't have to be questing from turns like turn 1 to turn 2. You know, a lot of times if they get a Bell down turn 1 or a big character down turn 1, they can stop you from doing that early questing, but that won't mean that you've lost the game. But if you're not being the aggressive, you're not constantly asking the questions from the start, you're not going to be asking many later on, as most things and everything in this deck caps out at 4. We've only got 2 characters that have 4 strength, 4 cost, so we don't play that late into the game either. But yeah, those are just sort of some brief topics and ways to describe the mulligan, and what cards you're really looking for to sort of power swing, especially into other steel decks, and how to win everything in the game, really. I think the deck's amazingly powerful. I think it's going to have a lot of problems into Emerald Amethyst. I think Blurple as well is ending up being quite a rough matchup. And I think anything that runs the Peter Pan, Shadow Finder is proving to be quite troublesome. If they can get it out and it gets a nice trade, and the next turn they play the Iago and get a nice trade, that's pretty rough. We might be able to let the Storm it, but you know, if it's already came in with Rush and done something, that's pretty bad for us. But I think the deck is amazing and is what I'm going to keep playing for set 8.